And I'm back with Richard Broadhead and John Lithgow. We're talking about the role of the humanities. Tell me a little bit about your own history. What did you study? What do you remember most?
Well, I went to Harvard and studied English history and literature, but fell in with the theater gang almost immediately. I grew up in a theater family with no intention of being an actor. I wanted to avoid being an actor. Which is
you wanted to avoid it because it was in the family?
Yeah, I didn't want to go into family business, which is a good way to go into acting, is to be drafted and to hear plenty of applause and laughter. By halfway through Harvard, I knew I was going to be an actor, but I continued, completed the 4 years, and got a wonderful education, even though it occupied about 1/4 of my time. I did go to England to study theater in earnest afterwards on a Fulbright grant. And within 2 weeks, I knew more about English history and literature than I had in my 4 years at Harvard. But it was a fantastic education. And as I said before, I think it's just simply the habit of learning and the discipline of learning. I think I have brought that to acting in all sorts of ways that I'm not even quite aware of.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. How do you make can you make an easy connection between, oh, this I studied, many years ago at Harvard or in England, and I learned about this English literature or history, to something you're performing in now, or is it just more there for you?
It's more there. It's almost like having a reference library.
That's right.
And certainly, I've done my share of Shakespeare, and I go back to England and sort of lock right into that experience. I worked at the National Theatre in London this past year. I don't know. I really can't make the concrete connection between studying that and performing this. But I just feel like my life is far more complete for having done that. And that's a hard thing to sell people on when you're advocating for the humanities. Especially in a difficult environment like Washington, D.C., and Capitol Hill in this day and age.
And you have to sell people on that sort of every day to make a case for it at the university?
Well, I don't sell in the sense of getting on a soapbox and selling it to a hostile audience. The kind of person who's going to look at a school like Duke is going to already have, I think, a pretty broad taste. You do run into, it is, since the recession, it's been a time of anxiety. Let's be clear, this isn't the first time the humanities have suffered economic anxiety. That's really been more or less a constant off and on, going back to the early 70s. But whenever it's new, people say, well, we can't afford that luxury anymore. But the thing is, education is what happens at the time of your life when you're opening up, when you're discovering the world. And the point is, it's not that you learn something and then you go do it. That's not the useful part of education. Education is the opening of the mind. People who don't know how to shift themselves back into the past, how to shift themselves into another culture, into the point of view of an author or a painter who sees something totally different from yourself. Those are very fundamental mental skills. They don't have practical yields, but they underlie many practical activities. We started today in the company of the 2 senators and 2 congressmen who commissioned our report, and one of them spoke about the Founding Fathers. And of course, the whole point is the Founding Fathers did things as homework that enabled them to write the Declaration of Independence. It's very largely based on works from the 1760s and 1750s that they read as students.
Oh, go ahead.
I also, we haven't even mentioned the arts, which is not exactly our portfolio on this report. But during those young years when you're educating yourself, you're also finding out about yourself, and there's nothing that leads you more directly to that experience than the creative arts. I've always felt that all kinds of creative arts go hand in hand with education.
But of course, that's a big problem in our society today too, especially at the lower at grade school and through high school.
Sure, we'll just need another commission. That will solve it.
Let me just ask you one more. You were earlier talking about the problem within the universities of not focusing enough here, and I wonder, and I having looked at the report, there is a sort of critique of being too inward-looking, right, by universities and not connecting with the broader society. What specifically would you like universities to do? What do you tell other university presidents and your own faculty to do to make the connection?
I myself am a humanist. I started my life as an American literature professor, and my career has evolved since then. But I would have to say the solution to the problem we've been talking about is a solution that needs contributions on many parts. It needs a federal role, but only the federal government can fund the area studies programs that train people for international expertise. It has a state role, it has a local role, local libraries, local museums, local history councils. But universities have a role to play in it too. They shouldn't simply wait for everybody else to solve the problem. And I do fervently think if people in the humanities want the public to care about them, it's worth our time reaching out to the public and making them feel the force of these subjects.
All right, Richard Broadhead and John Lithgow, thank you both very much.
Thanks.
Real pleasure.